So as the title says, we don't really buy bread anymore. In retirement, we like to eat very healthy food, so we like to know what the ingredients are. And we've started to make our own bread. And we haven't bought bread now in over 2 months. And this recipe today is the recipe that we use most of the time. It is very simple. The whole thing takes 3 or 4 hours start to finish, and very delicious. So I highly recommend you give it a try. Okay, so the ingredients are 1 cup of whole wheat flour, and you can see the one I'm using right here, it is an organic flour, and 2 cups of plain white flour, and once again I use an organic flour for this. I know some of you are going to be complaining because I'm not measuring in grams, but as I said, this is super simple, and just a 1 cup measure to do this is all you need. So there we go. There is 3 cups of flour in here, 1 whole wheat and 2 white, and you just kind of mix it up to evenly distribute the whole wheat flour. And then using a bread machine, instant yeast, and it is 1 teaspoon, which is a little bit less than half of a packet if you're using packeted yeast. Packet yeast has, I think, 2 1/4 teaspoons in it. And 1 teaspoon of salt. I use a sea salt. You can use whatever salt you like. And so then just mix that up. That's your salt, yeast, and flour. You just want to distribute those dry ingredients. And then you are putting in 1 1/2 cups of slightly warm water and mixing it up. You just want to make sure that all of the flour, there's no dry flour in the bowl. So I use this little silicone spatula, but you can use anything you want. You can do it with your hands. I've used a wooden spatula before, that worked just fine. But basically you're just going to mix the dry ingredients up and get it to the consistency that you're about to see. Okay, so now you're going to cover that with a towel or plastic wrap, which is what I use, and keep it at, my oven actually has a proofing function, which is really nice. So it's, you want the room 72, 73 degrees is optimal to allow this to rise, but you just want to cover it, keep it in a not cold area for 3 hours. And we'll come back to what it looks like in 3 hours. Okay, so now it's been 3 hours, and as you can see, the dough has risen considerably. So what we're going to do is prepare our surfaces. So I like to use this little flour sifter, and just makes it easier to distribute flour along the surface. I'm also putting it on the top here. This will end up being the surface that touches down on the board. And then I also have a banneton. The reason I use this is I prefer the shape of the loaf that comes out. You can make a round loaf, but it's a little awkward for eating because some slices are bigger and others aren't. So I flour this well because I do not want my dough sticking to this when I turn it out. So just give it a good coating. That should do the trick. Okay, so now we're going to turn out the dough onto the cutting board. We'll use the silicone spatula again. Just kind of loosen it up here. You can see how the dough has risen really well. Okay, so we'll put that out of the way. And then I'm just going to flour again around the edges and on the top. And what we're going to do now is stretch and fold, which gives it a little bit of substance. We pull, fold in, pull out, fold in. Super easy. Same thing here, fold in. It's getting a little sticky again, so I'm just going to put some more flour on it. Pull out, fold in, pull out, fold in. You see a little bit sticking to the board, which we don't really want. No big deal though, we can scrape it off. Okay, so we're going to do it a bit more. It'll hold its shape better if you do this a couple of times. You're just kind of developing the structure inside the dough. But very easy to do. I can already feel it tightening up. It's much harder now to pull. You can see it's holding its shape more too. So that's good. I'll put some more flour down there. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of fold it out like this. And then fold that in, fold this in, and then roll it up like this. Once again, this is developing those gluten strains, and you can see it kind of spread out as I did it. Almost looks like a croissant. And now I'm going to flour the whole thing. The reason for this is I don't want it sticking in the banneton, and then we'll bring our banneton over, and we're just going to kind of flip it over and drop it in there. It's going to, just like that, pinch it a little bit here. Okay, then we're going to cover it for 1 hour. While that's covering, we need to preheat our oven to 450 degrees, and we'll start that maybe at 20 minutes before we're ready to bake. And we do not preheat the Dutch oven. So we're putting this into a cold Dutch oven. So at this point, it's just going to sit for 1 hour until we're ready to bake. Okay, so it's now been 3 hours. I have my Dutch oven, and inside I use this little silicone mat, but you could put parchment paper in there if you want, or nothing. I only do it just to keep the Dutch oven from getting dirty. And you can see how this has risen quite a bit. And I am going to just dust the surface again. And then we'll also do the same here, because we don't want it to stick. And then turn it out onto the cutting board. There we go. That's pretty good. And you notice it's kind of splaying out a bit. So I will tuck it in, because I don't want it to spread out too much. And I'm going to give it a light dusting again, because I'm going to score the surface. So it's very well risen right now. I like to use the bench scraper to pick it up, because it's kind of loose. And there it is in the Dutch oven. So you can see how it looks there. And then I'm going to take my razor and I'm going to give it some cuts. I use a V shape because I don't want it to spread out. If I cut it along, it will just spread out. And that's it. Now I put the lid on, put it in the oven for 30 minutes, and then we take the lid off and leave it for another 10 minutes. So it has now been 30 minutes. So this is the time to take the cover off and leave it for another 10 minutes to brown it up. Okay, so it's now been in for 30 minutes cooking with the lid on and 10 minutes cooking with the lid off. It should now be a beautiful color. Take it out, and yeah, it looks good. So turn off the oven, and I put out a cooling rack so that I can take it out and cool it down. The silicon's still pretty hot, so I'll go ahead and take it out of here. Silicon's hot, so be careful. And there it is. That looks pretty good. So I'll leave it to cool, and then I'm going to put it in a Ziploc bag in the fridge. And what will happen, because right now it has a beautiful crust on it, but it's hard to cut. So I'll put it in the fridge and slice the entire loaf, and then I just toast it. But this makes a beautiful loaf, as you can see. Thank you for watching.